You and so many others Americans may believe that illegal immigrants come into our country through the weak border and steal our jobs and benefits/welfare. Well, what if I told you up until the 60s there was no regulation on immigrants from Mexico coming to the United States? In fact, border control and illegal immigration policies were not a political agenda until the 1980s, according to Andreas. You might assume that by the popularity of attention towards border control, now that there's been an extreme influx in illegal immigrants since then. However, that would also be a misconception. I'm sure we have all listened to recent political news. One of the most common topics in dispute is the immigrants coming from Mexico. In most recent news, there are migrant children in the United States separated from their parents who were deported back to Mexico. The reason they left in the first place was to find a sporting job and avoid Mexican gangs. Today we are witnessing these appalling problems because of something that happened in the mid-60s when the term illegal immigrant was fabricated. Congress enacted landmark reforms in 1965 to our immigration laws, according to Massey. The same migrants were leaving the same communities to go to the same employers in the same U.S. states in about the same number, but now the migrants were illegal and hence, by definition, lawbreakers and criminals. We are going to take a look at why the United States let immigrants from Mexico into the U.S., how immigration reform created legal immigration, and the false claim that border control is the sole cause of immigration. The United States leans on the immigrants coming from Mexico. You might not realize it, but our economy grows by allowing Mexican immigrants to come work in the U.S. The start of Mexican immigration occurred in the later decades of the 19th century, when migrants began searching for jobs in the cotton fields of Texas. This happened to be a period in the time where unprecedented influx of American capital within mining, farming, and transportation transformed Mexico's isolated northern states into the border, according to Zolberg. Once the U.S. entered World War I, an absence of agricultural and railroad workers emerged. Congress explicitly exempted some 70,000 Mexican recruits as workers from an array of qualitative requirements designed to avert immigration from Europe. Since there was a forceful recognition of overseas migration in the 19th century, many California farmers also turned to the South to find workers to man the rising factories in the fields. Migrants from Mexico who are coming to work are simultaneously increasing the demand for labor. You might think by having immigrants work jobs in the U.S., citizens will end up making less money or lose their jobs, according to Davidson. This isn't the case. Migrants work immigrant jobs the U.S. citizen would never exert. The wages they are making are being used toward renting apartments, eating food, getting haircuts, or buying cell phones. Immigrants are increasing the size of overall population, which means the size of the economy is getting bigger. There are more jobs being created because of Mexican immigrants. The U.S. has relied on Mexican immigrants for quite some time. So why did we start calling them illegal immigrants? In 1965, an immigration reform was created, which also brought along the creation of illegal immigration. This reform was passed without a good understanding of the reasons people were migrating to the U.S. Because of the reform, a rise of illegal immigration was generated. All of a sudden, the U.S. was recording more illegal immigrants because of the allowed access from Mexico had been decreased. Now there's a cycle of border enforcement. That produced more rather than fewer undocumented migrants living north of the border. A substantial mistake that we make is something called the lump of labor fallacy. The erroneous notion that there is only so much work to be done and that no one can get a job without taking it from someone else. This is what many of us believe, a fallacy claiming that there is only so many job opportunities and if we let immigrants in, the odds grow slim. Bringing up the population by allowing immigrants into the U.S., the economy benefits in growing. This is a fallacy politicized by the government and used as a campaign tactic. It creates this necessity for a border control that is funded so heavily. The efforts to regulate the flow of illegal immigrants across the U.S.-Mexico border have faced a reconstruction since the early 90s, according to Andreas. Border patrol against illegal immigration has been elevated from an untended area of law enforcement to one of the most politically popular topics. The expansion of border enforcement has been less about restricting legal border crossers and symbolically reestablishing the U.S. territorial authority. During the 20th century, the U.S. and Mexico not only tolerated but actively facilitated and encouraged the influx of cheap labor and across the border. Why is the idea of building a wall going to solve all of these problems when really we should be concerned with the internal issues in the United States? The government funds so much money into the border control when in actuality the border control is not the problem. Using illegal immigration as a campaign tactic to ensure natives are safe and have their jobs is the problem. Behind this falsified propaganda lies opportunity for economy to grow without need of funding for an unnecessary cause and labeling migrants as criminals for coming to the U.S. to pay for their families. We have been allowing migrants from the U.S. We have been allowing migrants from Mexico to enter the U.S. for quite some time. Once World War I ended, then an immigration reform passed, creating legal immigration. From the supposedly large number of illegal immigrants, the false claim that border control was the sole cause of immigration. The illegal immigrant problem is really just a campaigning tactic. The United States actually wants to implement policy about it because our economy relies on low-wage workers. Thank you.